What is going on, Dominators? Rico Garcia here, and I'm really excited to go ahead and bring you this episode. Today, we're going to be joined by Gokul from Restoration Brokers of America. And by the way, if you've been following the show for some time now, you know that he's already been on the show previously. If you haven't checked out that interview, there's going to be a link in the video description as well as in the show notes below. Now, this interview is absolutely amazing. Gokul has this gift of breaking down highly complex ideas and concepts in business, and when it comes down to numbers, and breaking it down in a very simple to understand formula. And in a Restoration Domination exclusive, he's going to be sharing one of the data points that he believes that every single business owner should be tracking to really see massive growth in their business. So we cover a lot of ground, everything from getting the clarity that you need in your business, having an exit number. Like, what is your ideal number? Like, why did you get into business? What dollar figure do you want to hit to where you might say, okay, you know what, this is my target and where I'm willing to sell. He's going to be talking about the importance of team members, the revenue that each team member needs to make, and all of the markers that you as a business owner should be tracking to make sure that you're on track to having the business of your dreams. This is an amazing interview. Had a blast with Gokul from Restoration Brokers of America. And without further ado, let's jump right into the interview. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
All right, what is going on, Dominators? I hope that you are ready because we're in for a little bit of a ride. We're going to be talking about how to get your business right, and more importantly, how to potentially get the exit that you deserve. What's going on, Gokul, man? Pleasure to have you back
brother?
on
How's
the
it going,
show.
man?
Good.
Again.
Thank you. Are you ready to help us dominate?
Dude, I'm fired up, man. I'm fired up. I've had espressos, 2 of them. Let's do this.
Man, yeah, you're like me, bro. You're almost Cuban at this point, right? Just pounding back espressos. I love it. So we were talking. So first of all, by the way, for all those dominators out there, if you're listening and you haven't caught Gokul, this is the second time that he's been on the show. Yeah. We're going to leave a link to our very first interview that we had together. That way you can go ahead and catch up, get a little bit of backstory. There's been so much that you've been doing. I mean, in the industry, there's a lot of sales that you've helped, come see to fruition. But off camera, we were talking about some gold. And I even told you, and I'll say this openly, like I've spoken to quite a few individuals that broker businesses and just kind of the landscape that they're in. And they're all great guys, right? But you were talking about some nuggets of gold that I was like, man, Gokul, like if more people knew this, if more people had an understanding on how this works, it provides so much clarity, and it changes the paradigm. It changes the way that they look at their business. And I'm really excited to go ahead and get into all of this stuff. But before we do that, just do me a favor. For those of you that may not be familiar with who you are, if they've never seen your picture on the back of CNR magazine, fill in some of the gaps on the intro. Let everybody know who you are and exactly what it is that you do.
Yeah, man, happy to do it. Again, thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I founded a company called Restoration Brokers of America, and that's exactly what we do. We take entrepreneurs in the restoration industry. We help them get ready to exit their business when the time is right. We help them prepare their business. We value their business, go find a buyer, get it financed, take it to close, and help them really cash out on years and decades of hard work that they've put into their business so they can go on to the next chapter of their life. And that's the kind of what I do. And man, it's funny. The other day, our Florida Lotto has gone up high, right? It's like 100 million or something now. And one of my buddies asked me, like, hey, what will you do if you win it, right? I mean, we all do that on Fridays when we sit and have a beer with our buddies, right? And I said, listen, I love what I do. I said, yeah, maybe I'll take a few extra vacations, but I'll probably be doing the same thing, It's fun.
Right. So do me a favor, man. And I know you're not the type of guy who necessarily likes to boast, wink, wink, but let's talk about, let's give some context here. Let's talk about some of the big deals that you've done since the last time that you've been on the show, because I want to make this real for people that are watching and listening, because I think that that's going to set the standard on, it's going to give them a place to aim for, right? As to what's possible, because as an entrepreneur, before you answer that, just so you understand where I'm coming from on this, as an entrepreneur, especially in the restoration arena, right? And you're dealing with insurance companies, you're dealing with your employees, you're dealing with, phone call. There's so many different things in your business that you're dealing with that sometimes you get tired and you're like, man, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, yes, I'm making a great living, but what am I doing this for? Like, what comes at the end of the tunnel? And sometimes what we need to do is we just need to kind of change what we're aiming at, what we're looking at, understand what's possible. And all of a sudden that kind of reinvigorates what it is that we do every morning. So let's talk about some of the big deals and some of the deals that you've helped put together over the past 12 months.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I'm bound by non-disclosures, right? So I can't talk about specific deals, but I'll tell you what, in the last 15 years, we've done almost 650 million in transactions, all in restoration, all in restoration. Okay.
Right.
So we've done deals from 3 million to 10 million to 30 million to 50 million. We've done deals internationally. We've done deals in Australia. We've done one of the biggest restoration transactions in Australia last year. Okay.
Right.
It was 36 locations, one of the biggest companies in the world. So we're doing some international deals. We're getting ready to do probably the second biggest one in Canada now. So we've done a ton of those. As far as restoration owners and how we help them, the latest count I had about a couple of quarters ago, we've done over 600 transactions, all in the restoration space. Right. So, like I said, we know enough to be dangerous.
I love it. I love it.
And you're absolutely correct, man. Listen, we all as entrepreneurs, right? And you're a small business guy. I'm a small business guy. Most of the people we're talking to are running their own business. They're founders. And we're all a little crazy to get into business in the first place.
Right? 100%.
So what happens is we get really enthusiastic. And we got this invincibility attitude. Most entrepreneurs have them. Okay. Otherwise, they won't do it. All right.
Right.
And it serves us really well when we start a business because we're not listening to nobody. Right. Hey, I got it. I'm going to go do the impossible. I'm going to borrow $100 and start in my driveway and build this thing up. We all have these great stories. I mean, listen, I borrowed money from my father-in-law to start my business 15 years ago. I mean, we all got our stories and reasons to do what we're doing. And we have this sense of invincibility, and it serves us so well when we're entrepreneurs. But here's what happens as we grow our business. That invincibility hurts us because we think that we're going to run this thing forever. We think that things are going to be great forever. We think that business is going to be the most important thing in my life forever.
Right.
And it's not. At some point you have kids, you have a family, you have aging parents, you got health, all these things will start to take precedence. So
or you become like me and you start getting grandkids, right?
And you start getting and so at some point, you gotta the invincibility is great, but at some point you're gonna have to start planning.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. Which I think that this, is the perfect segue for one of your pillars that you talk about, which is clarity, right? Because you can't get clarity unless you begin to plan. So go ahead and expand on that, right? From as a business owner, whether you're literally just started your restoration company today, like honestly, that would be the best time, right? If an entrepreneur is listening to this, they just opened their restoration company last week, they've barely done any transactions, this would be like the perfect episode for them to listen to because it's like, great, we're doing this right from the beginning, right? Like we're starting to plan right from day one. Unfortunately, we also know as entrepreneurs that doesn't always happen that way, right? So, but whether you're in business one day or a decade, and this is like one of those important parts where you have to plan to get that clarity. Talk about what clarity is and what it should be in order to make your business genuinely attractive to a sale.
Yeah. So, having a vision is really important, and understanding what a business means to you and to your family and what purpose it serves is really important. correct? And I tell all my owners, when they're trying to exit or they're trying to run their business, if you just keep on running it, month after month, quarter after quarter, man, you start to lose focus and then you start to lose the motivation because it's just the same,
Right.
and this is like, and I know people who are listening, the dominators out there know this feeling. You're driving in the truck or you're driving in your car and you're going, it can be this freaking hard.
Right.
We've all thought that, me included.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? This is the day-to-day grind, right? And so how do you get out of that? You can't outgrind yourself. Even if you work 24/7, 365, it's limited. You
Right.
cannot scale hard work. That's one of my tenets I've learned from talking to hundreds of entrepreneurs. You cannot scale hard work.
Exactly.
So then what do? You got to get clarity. You got to know what your number is. You got to know how big or small you want your business to be, right? You want to know how you're going to scale it. And then you want to know how do you want to exit it. And then after you exit, you want to know what you're doing after.
Right.
That's the clarity. Those are what I call my 5 elements of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? So without those, you're just operator. You're in the treadmill. You're not building something of value. And you're saying, I'm going to drive this, or I'm going to pilot this plane. I'm going to climb it to 30,000 foot level. I'm going to cruise, and then I'm going to land this and sell it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go do something else. That's the plan that you want.
Right.
Make sense?
Absolutely. And where does leveraging, because again, like you said, you can't grind your way to riches. You just can't do that, right? Because there's only 24 hours in a day. You have to sleep. You have to pay attention to yourself. You have to pay attention to your family. There's just not enough hours in the day. At some point, you need to leverage as many things as is humanly possible in your business, right? Whether that's leveraging finance, leveraging personnel, leveraging better talent, and then kind of taking a step back and removing yourself as the operator and becoming the CEO of the company, becoming this person who's looking at things with an objective eye. When should that start taking place? Is there a magical number as to when, or is this whenever that awakening happens in the entrepreneur's mind, just says, okay, now is the time where I need to start learning how to leverage my time better?
It's a great question, right? So there's different stages in a company,
Mm-hmm.
right? We all go through this, right?
Right.
And there's about 7 stages, and I can talk about it for hours, but let me give you the Cliff Note version of it, right? The summary version of it. And we'll do another show on this, like we'll dive deep into it down the road. There's different stages in a company. And when you look at restoration companies or any service companies, you got the startup phase, right? Then you're going to get into some growth. This is when you're out of your driveway, you're buying your first 2,000 square foot warehouse, you've got 2 techs,
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Your wife may be helping you in the business. Your kids may be helping you in the business.
Usually at that point, everything is still peachy keen. Like, right, you're excited.
We're pumped, man. I mean, we're ready to go, dominate, right? So you start to grow, and then at some point you start to grow faster.
Mm-hmm.
Things start to compound. Mm-hmm. This is when confidence level is at the highest peak, right? Like I can do no wrong. It's like Michael Jordan in the zone. It's like, hey. I'm here, right?
Yep.
And then at some point, every business will start to plateau out.
Right.
And then it plateaus for a while. And then the owners has a decision to make. Do I re-energize and grow? Or if you don't do it, it starts to come down.
Right.
So let's look at those 3 stages. Let's look at it just simply as a startup, growth, plateau, and then a reinventing stage. Let's look at those 4. What most entrepreneurs need to pay attention to is every stage your business goes through, your job description changes. And that's the biggest mistake that people make. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the guy is a rainmaker, an owner, an entrepreneur, and he started in his driveway and he's selling. Once he starts building a team, he cannot be the rainmaker anymore. Now he's got to be the team builder.
Right.
His job description is completely flipped. As he's building a team, if he doesn't change his job description and get the skills necessary to be a team builder, he's going to hit a wall and he's going to get really frustrated and really burnt out because he's doing a job that he's not supposed to be doing for this company.
Mm-hmm.
You understand where I'm going with this?
100%.
As your business grows, you go from a team builder to now a systemizer.
Right.
Now you got to put systems in place. So you got to have HR systems, technology systems, AR, AP, collections, marketing systems. So if you're a team builder and your business has outgrown that role and it's growing and growing, you've got to be a systemizer. If you don't, you're hitting roadblocks again.
Right.
And then when you get plateaued out, you got to become what I call an architect or an investor. That's when you look at your business as just an investment and you say, okay, my job description has changed from a systemizer to an investor. Now you're talking about, hey, I've got a lot of cash flow in my business. Now, do I go to adjacent markets? Do I go to the next state? Do I go and grow to the next county? Do I acquire somebody? Or do I exit to private equity and take all my chips off the table?
Right.
Or do I exit and then roll over 20% of my wealth that I've created into the mothership and cash out 80%? Do I sell to my employees and maybe work 20 hours a week? That's all architects. So what happens is an entrepreneur must recognize where the company is and have the confidence and the trust to continue to change their own job description
Right.
over time. And if you don't change your own job description, the business stalls. And that's what I see every time.
And let's dig a little bit deeper into the whole plateau stage, right? Because I think that the plateau stage is very, very interesting. This is the part in business where you kind of hit a fork in the road, and it's either, and also I want to clarify what a plateau really, really means. The moment that the business plateaus, you immediately start losing money. It may not seem like it from a simple, on the P&L, right? Because the number stays exactly the same, but you've got other forces at play. You've got inflation, you've got all of these other things, right? So immediately, the moment that you hit this plateau, your business is beginning to die. What have you noticed in an entrepreneur's mind, particularly in the restoration industry, that motivates them to either be like, okay, I am in fact going to reinvent myself. I am going to go to the next level. And what's the difference in mindset between those guys and the guys that just say, okay, I'm fine. I hit wherever I wanted to hit and just kind of stay there.
Yeah. So the guys that, it's a really interesting topic, right? We could, again, man, listen, we have people that'll come to us and say, well, we have steady sales every year for the last 3 to 4 years.
Right.
We're doing great. We're steady. But in reality, you're not.
Right.
Because let's say that you're in a town and you've got 5 years ago, you had a 10% market share in that town of all the restoration jobs that came into that town. What if the town grew by 25% and you still have the same number of jobs? You just lost market share over the last 3 years, even though your number is constant.
So can I stop you there? Because this is, again, so to me, you're kind of speaking
under the hood.
Well, right. Well, you're really speaking my love language here, because these are metrics that, and again, I speak to a lot of people every single day, both on camera and off camera. And this is what we do. We're dissecting stuff. We're bringing ideas, and very, very few people are even talking, much less measuring, but talking about these important metrics that you're talking about. You may have steady sales. Even better, you might have a steady increase in sales. But now, how many people are taking the time to take a step back and say, hey, wait, what's my population? What's it grown by? Are people moving in? Are people moving out? What's the percentage of restoration projects that have been happening in this particular area?
Volumes.
How many people are actually paying attention to these numbers?
Yeah. So listen, we talk to owners all the time, and it's really rare when I say, hey, how's claim volumes grown in the territory that you serve? People
What a great question. What a great question.
I say, well, how much of that claim volume are you getting? Forget revenue. Forget the revenue side of it. I'm just talking market share out of the possible, let's say there's 10,000 claims a year in the area that you're serving, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the game is the really great entrepreneurs. They say, okay, out of the 10,000, I got 1,000 now. What do I need to do to go get 1,500?
Right.
What do I need to do to go get 2,000 of those claims? What do I need to go do to get 3,000 of that claims? Right. They're not looking at revenue and saying, oh, I did whatever, 5 million last year. I did 5.1 million this year. Everything's great.
Right.
That's what I call a false positive, right? So the good entrepreneurs are really looking at the right numbers. To me, man, that's where it starts.
Right.
If you're looking at the wrong numbers, it's like a domino effect, right? So if you look at the wrong numbers, you're going to ask the wrong questions. Right. If you ask the wrong questions, you get the wrong answers. From the wrong answers, you take wrong actions.
Yep. 100%.
So it's all a domino effect, right? So you got to look at the right KPIs and the right metrics in your business. The number one difference, I mean, there's a lot of differences between guys that scale to 10 million, 15, 20 million in revenue. It's not hard work. Okay. The person doing a million in revenue is a lot of times working harder than somebody that scaled to 20, 30 million in revenue. So it's not hard work. It's
Right.
not even intelligence. There are a lot of smart entrepreneurs on every spectrum, you
Mm-hmm.
know, within restoration. It's just strategies.
How does, because I know someone's listening to this, and hell, even myself, for clarity, as when you're looking at your local market, how do you get that number, right? Like how would one go about to say, okay, X amount of claims in my geographical area, in my service area? How does one find that number so that one can begin to track that number?
Yeah, you know, so you can talk to adjusters, you can talk to an insurance company. If you're part of a TPA, you can talk to a TPA. You can purchase industry reports that talk about insurance claims.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's all kinds of combinations of things that you can do, right? And let's say you have none of that. You got one data point. It's okay to take a guesstimate and start tracking it yourself.
Right.
Does it make sense what I'm saying? Like
100%.
even in our own office, right? When I look at restoration in my market, it depends on who you talk to. Some people say there's 20,000 restoration companies in the country. Some people say there's 30.
Right.
But
Yeah. The
guess
number's
what?
all over the place. Yeah.
It's irrelevant. You know what I did for my own firm? I just pegged it right in the center at 25,000. And I'm like, guys, we're going to go chase it. Let's go.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's more important to start chasing it than just figure out the number is exactly right.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Progress
you take the
versus
guesstimate and you just move.
progress versus perfection, right?
You
And look, man,
perfection. So let's say you're in a county that's got, I don't know, 5 million people.
right.
And maybe the Chamber of Commerce said, you know, this county has grown by 20% in the last year. You know that your claims can go up 20%. If that's just keeping the same market share.
Right.
You see, so these are the ways you start piecing this together. And
That's
it's
amazing.
not hard.
Yep. Yeah. So we're still kind of like in this phase of clarity, and it's funny because we're like, hey, you know, this is going to be a fairly quick podcast. We're going to get right down. But again, every time we get Gokul on, it's like it's never that because there's so much, right?
Dude,
There's so many,
on this stuff, man.
so many nuggets of gold, right? So one of the things that we were talking about off camera with regards to clarity, you had a couple of key points there. One of which is, what is your number as an entrepreneur? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. What's your number? Right. So here's a great thing about business ownership. Possibilities are endless, but here's your mind. If you don't have a number in your mind, what is the right kind of business? How big do I want to grow it? How much money do I want to make on it? What is the value that I want to create out of it? The answer is always going to be more. And then if you have the wrong strategies, what people are going to do is most owners are just going to stack one thing on top of the other, mindlessly trying to grow revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get into trouble.
Right.
Right. So really understanding what those key numbers are is absolutely critical to marry your personal life and to marry your business.
Right.
That's what I mean by knowing your number. You got to know your revenue number. You got to know your earnings number. You want to know your market share number. You want to know your profit margins numbers. And you want to know what your exit number is.
Right.
And numbers don't lie, right? I mean,
right.
The numbers are going to be the numbers.
Right.
And
now, should an entrepreneur, especially in the early stages, should they walk into the game? And just, you know, we're using that term loosely, right? The game, because they think it just makes it a little bit easier to play, right? Should they walk into the game and say, hey, you know what? We're still a relatively small organization, but in my mind, I have this set goal as a number to strive for. They may not have the personnel, they may not have the accounts, they may not have this, they may not have that, but they're like, hey, you know what? If I could build something that I've built, my team has helped me build, and we can get to this point, I think that I would be happy. Is that a good, you think, psychological strategy to keep people motivated, to keep them going, to give them something to strive towards, and then also to tweak along the way and make these minor adjustments to the sale in order to hit that number?
Yeah, man, you hit the nail, right? So here's what I always say, even in my own office here at the firm. You know, you gotta plan the work, and then you gotta work the plan.
Right.
It's really that simple. If not, you are in a complete reaction mode.
Right.
Complete reaction mode. So if things are going well, you won't be able to know why they're going well, to repeat it. If
Right.
things are going bad, you don't know why things are going bad. And being in a complete reaction mode puts so much stress on you as a person. It doesn't matter if you're doing well. When you're driving in your truck, you've got to be able to answer the question, what are the things we did to get there? If you don't, and if that's a black hole and that's a gap in your thinking, it's always going to be stressful. It's like a toothache. It'll always be at the back of your head.
Right.
You've got to have this clarity.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of, and this is where being, the architect, I believe, going back to that is very important, because sometimes you can identify what got you there, but it was contingent 100% or 90% on you. And that strategy is no longer scalable.
Correct.
And one of the mistakes that I see a lot of business owners make, right? I've made it. I think we've all made it, is we just hit this brick wall. And it was, when you sit back and you look at it, why am I not growing? Well, it's because it was contingent upon your time, your effort, and you didn't find a system to make it scalable, right?
So what happens is, in that instance, they forgot to make a transition from a team builder to an architect.
Right.
Right. So if you're not building your team and the best way to look at this, and this is from talking to thousands of owners, the simplest way to look at it is, whatever job you're doing today, work your way out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yesterday I
was
was,
coming at.
yeah,
So
100%.
if you're the biggest sales guy in your company, take a 12-month plan to fire yourself, replace yourself. Then you're going to become a GM in your company, right? Or whatever it is you're going to be. Then you know what? Take another 12 months and say, I'm no longer going to be a GM. I'm going to replace myself. Then you're going to become a CEO. And you say, you know what? I no longer want to be a CEO. I'm going to replace myself. Then you're going to become an architect. You see where I'm coming at? And that's a real simple way to do it is, whatever role your audience, like let's say someone's listening to your show, and I know a lot of people listen to it, they're driving down the truck and they're listening to the show and they're like, man, where do I start? It's real simple. Just take a piece of paper, write down your job description the way you feel it today, and just make a 12-month plan to replace yourself out of it.
Yep. Yesterday I was watching an interview
every 12 months. If you can do that, you're growing.
Yesterday I was watching an interview from the original founder of Kinko's. Such a down-to-earth guy, and this is an individual that sold his company, which in his words, he sold it way too early for not enough money, right? I think everybody who sells a business, that's what they say. But one of the things that he said is, like, part of his secret to success was that, yes, he was always working hard, but it wasn't a laborious task. It was working hard in the sense that he was always in the trenches, trying to figure out, going from store to store, and almost kind of taking a bird's eye view of the little things that could be happening better, right? And this is where this architect mentality comes in, right? So I think it's, you have to still hustle, you still have to grind, you still have to work hard, but you have to work at the areas that are really going to make your job better, right? Because the technician is focused on the thing that he has in front of him today. But as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, true entrepreneur, your vision is you're taking on the problems and anticipating the problems of tomorrow. And the way that you do that is by being present now and looking at it through this lens of what little small minutia can be improved upon, can increase profitability. What could we remove because it's no longer needed, right? And that's how, before you know it, you do that time and time and time again over consistency. Now you've got this business that's extremely, extremely attractive. So before we move on, another thing that we had spoken about off camera that we definitely wanted to talk about, and we've kind of touched on some of these, is the 3 to 4 most important things on an exit, right? Like what people are really looking for on an exit. So I'd love to dive into that. But before we do so, let's take a quick moment to think our sponsors. Hey, real quick, are you a restoration pro looking to hire top talent inside of our industry? We all know that labor shortages are real, but I may have a solution for you, okay? And that is Wylander. Why? Well, very simple. They are the go-to recruiting company inside of the restoration arena. Well, the reason I say that is very simple. They've got proofs in the pudding. They've got over 1,000 placements in all 50 states, plus Canada. And what that means is that they not only have the expertise, but more importantly, they have the connections to find that top industry talent that you and your team are looking for. So stop wasting time. Stop sifting through tons and tons of resumes and just conducting endless interviews. Let Wylander do the heavy lifting for you and help you find that right person to help your company succeed. Call Wylander today and start building that dream team inside of the restoration arena. Dominators, let's face it, your company will make it or break it on the backs of your estimating team. But if we're honest here for a second, what tools have you actually given them to succeed? The Actionable Profile is the newest tool inside of your estimator's toolbox, or at the very least, it should be. The Actionable Xactimate Profile is a data-driven solution that provides real-time estimating guidance on the fly. It checks for both overages, omissions in your estimates in real time, leading your team to having much more accurate scopes each and every single time that they're writing an estimate. Avoid any kind of potential conflicts with the adjuster and ensure that your estimates include every single warranted line item with the Actionable Xactimate Profile. Get your free demo today. If you head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate, we've got an amazing offer for you. Again, head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate and get your free demo today. Hey, Dominators, I want to talk to you about Impartial and how Impartial creates timely and accurate estimates for faster and fairer claims settlements. Impartial's intelligent toolkit leverages Matterport's 3D scanning technology to automatically generate mitigation and repair estimates. And with Impartial Scope, you can extract relevant data that's embedded within the pre-mitigation and the post-mitigation scans and generate objectively accurate Xactimate or Symbility estimates. Remove the administrative burden and finally accelerate your claims approvals with Impartial today. Dominators, never fill out another claim packet yourself or wait on hold for what seems sometimes to be hours on end to try to get a hold of a lost draft mortgage representative again. Surety was actually purpose-built to keep insurance proceeds flowing to vetted restoration contractors just like you, to relieve cash flow crunch and to reduce a lot of the common administrative burdens that happens when there's a mortgage company involved. So get paid for the work that you've done, get paid faster, get paid with a lot less effort, because listen, at the end of the day, it's your money. So if you want to go ahead and check out Surety, which I would strongly recommend that you do, head on over to your.surety.com/dominate. Again, that's your.surety.com/dominate. We got a really special offer for you. You'll be thankful you did. Hey guys, let me ask you a quick question. Do you want to get paid faster and collect more on your insurance invoices? Then listen, look no further than One Claim Solutions. OCS is an insurance billing specialist that works with adjuster on behalf of people just like us, restoration contractors, to accelerate our receivables cycle and, more importantly, increase our overall collections. Contractors that work with One Claim get their invoices paid on average in around 32 days. And in most cases, actually see an increase in the collections that more than offset the price of the service. So in a lot of ways, this makes OCS effectively free. And that's even before you start to count in the overhead savings that's tied to billing and all of the other administrative burdens that go along with that. So I tell you what, let One Claim Solutions deal with carriers so that you can spend more time on what matters most, which is running your business. Get your free consultation today. Head on over to oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. Once again, that is oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. All right, Dominators, we are back. Let's go ahead and talk about, we kind of left off. We've covered a lot of ground. Some of this stuff we've touched on lightly. 3 to 4 things that are the most important thing on an exit. Gokul, expand on that. What does that mean?
So you got to have clarity, right? We talked about that quite a lot. You got to get clarity on your number. You also have to have incredible clarity on what you're going to do after, right? Because it's your life. It's been your life for so long. It's an identity,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And if you don't know what you're going to do after, you're going to go into depression. I've seen it. Okay, so
Right.
you've got to know what you're doing after.
Right.
Write your own job description 10
Mm-hmm.
years after you sell your company. So that's
Mm-hmm.
number one. Here's another thing I wrote: teams. We talked about that a little bit, right?
Yep.
Most buyers, when they're looking for it, they don't want you to be the center of every action in your business. If you do that, your business is not worth anything.
Right.
You got to keep firing your own self from your job and make your team do it. So the better your team, the stronger your bench strength, the more the business is valued. So you got to start building your team, right? And then your financials, right? Your financials have to be clean. Absolutely have to be clean. And and then you're looking at the revenue mix, right? So you're looking at also where one source of revenue doesn't equal to like 50% of your sales,
Right.
right? So let's say your cousin is a part of a TPA and they're giving you 50, or own an insurance agent or whatever, and they're giving you half of your revenue. You want your revenue really, really mixed and diversified. And here's a nugget. I know we talked about this, and I told you I'll drop it here. And this is one of the things that we have been doing a ton of research on.
And this
Right?
is a Restoration Domination exclusive, I
This is
believe.
this is the first time I'm actually talking about it. It's because we've been doing a ton of research on it. We've been going back to 15 years of data and to start looking at, why are some companies worth more? Why are some entrepreneurs able to scale faster than others? Why are some entrepreneurs not hurried? And why does someone work 24/7 and they're not able to scale their business? We're asking all these same questions,
Right.
right, at our firm. And here's one thing that's really interesting: revenue per head.
I love it.
We need to start talking about that, right? So let me give you an example. So you got a business, it's doing 3 million in revenue, and you've got 20 people working for you, right? I don't know what that comes out. 15 people working for you. It's about
Mhm.
$500, 500,000.
Right.
Let's say that 50,000, I mean. So let's say that I have the same $3 million business and I got 10 people working for me. My revenue per head is 300,000.
Right.
That makes sense? A lot more.
A lot more.
Revenue per head incredibly increases the value of your business
In so many ways.
in so many ways. Okay. So if I was going to say, man, there's one kind of master metric that can solve a whole bunch of problems, whether you're selling your business today, 5 years from now, 30 years from now, you're not even thinking about selling your business.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start looking at revenue per head, because
Now,
here's what
should this
happens,
be
right?
a number that is also inclusive of, and again, just for the sake of clarity, right? Should this be inclusive of the owner slash operator?
Everybody.
Everybody. So
Everybody.
I'm just thinking about this as you're talking about it, right? We're not all mathematicians, right? Let's just call a spade a spade. Like, most of us bumped into this, like, and next thing you know, we're running a restoration company. But think about the simplicity about this, right?
Yes.
Take your last year's numbers. How many
Yeah.
people do you have? Yourself included.
Yeah.
Divide. What's the total revenue per head? Everybody in my organization. Wow. What simplicity, right?
Yes.
But then within that, talk about how using that simplicity, how we can dissect that and get a little bit deeper into the weeds and how we can grow that.
So, I've seen companies, one of the things that we do at our company is we talk to almost 20 to 25 restoration owners a month from all across the country.
Right.
And we all start with analyzing their business, because they're calling us to exit or not exit or prepare for an exit. So we're diving deep into these companies. So we're looking at, 250, 300 companies a year. And
Right.
we've been doing this for like 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Just data after data after data. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so it all comes to, if you look at the spear, the tip of the spear, this revenue per head will solve so many problems in your business, right? Oh, I got to go buy this. I got to expand. Because what happens is, Rico, is most owners are just stacking problems on top of the problems. And then they're just kind of building it without a master plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm going to hire this marketing. I just talked to a guy last. I'll give you an example, right? I talked to a guy up in Tennessee. Oh man, Gokul, I just hired this guy at 300,000 plus salary, this guy's supposed to be this rock star sales guy, and he hasn't brought in any business.
Right.
And here's what I told him. If you're running at a 20% margin, he's got to bring in what? 6 times the 300,000 just to break even on that guy.
Right.
Think about that for a second.
Yep. Yeah, and this is a number that a lot of people don't really think about, right? They don't think in terms of they don't think in terms of margins.
In business.
Right.
Correct? So this revenue per head solves all kinds of problems. What it's going to do is bring discipline into your business. And if you're saying, okay, I've got 3 million in revenue, I've got 10 people working for me, I can, without a shadow of a doubt, tell you what kind of margins you got. Mm-hmm. Your margins are going to be really good.
Right.
Oh, my margins suck. Well, your revenue per head sucks. That's where it starts.
Right.
Right. So it's going to solve all kinds of problems. Right. And then you say, well, I want to grow. Most people will just hire all these rock star salespeople and then kind of hope for the best.
Right.
You don't need to do that. You say, I'm still going to maintain, let's say it's $300 of revenue per head. I'm going to get one person, let that grow to where I'm maintaining that 300 revenue. Then I add another. Now you're meaningfully, systematically growing your business. And you know what's the best thing about that? Your margins are going to be so good, your customers are going to grow the business for you.
Yes. And I love it.
Right?
It's such a simple metric.
Money. You don't need to borrow. You don't need to get lines of credit. You don't need to do any of it. Revenue per head will allow your customers, and the profit you generate, you just keep stacking and you just keep growing, and the customers will grow your business for you.
Yeah.
So this is a phenomenon that we have been really studying at our firm. And I've never talked about this before. So there you go, man.
Yeah. And that's such an amazing thing. And we were talking about this a little bit off camera about, how, so many people track so many different metrics. And this is one of those metrics that is just staring everybody right in the face. Correct. And I know from having so many candid and open, conversations with people that this has never come up, right? This kind of metric, following this type of a metric is really something that, data scientists would look at, right? These are the kind of metrics that, guys like me, like I was like, man, you're talking my love language, because these are the kind of, minutia things that I like to track and find the simplicity in, because once you figure that out, now it makes it so much easier to scale your business, regardless of what that is. These are the kind of metrics that we use a lot when it comes down to our marketing, right? Where it's like every last little effort is being tracked. So do me a favor, let's take a step back for some
use this, right?
I'm sorry?
Internet guys use this quite a lot. Tech companies use it. Tech companies, revenue for employees, huge in tech companies.
Yep.
And that's why they're so profitable.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So why can't we use the same metric? And why can't we say, okay, we're going to hit whatever the numbers, 200,000 per employee or 300,000 or 400,000 per employee? Why can't we keep that and do it on our own? I think it makes us lean and mean, and it cuts out all the noise on how to grow a business.
I love it. Do me a favor, man. Let's take a step back from this so that we can provide some benchmarks and some clarity to entrepreneurs with some industry standard numbers, or what you would recommend, right, from day one. And that is profitability, gross margins, net margins, and what an entrepreneur should aim for to say at the end of the year, net, I'm getting paid, or have the ability to pay myself. That's not that you will, but I have the ability to make X amount out of all of my effort. I feel like there's a lot of numbers floating around in the industry, and I'd like to provide some real clarity to say, hey, look, when $1 million in revenue comes in, ideally, this was all of your gross expenses. This is what you should be looking to take home. Can you break that down to kind of give people something to aim for?
Yeah, man, absolutely we can. So I'm going to divide it into 2 buckets, okay? So I'm going to divide it into the really big companies, let's say with 15, 20 million in revenues, let's say 10 million and up in revenues. Let's put that in one bucket.
All right.
Somewhere around 14 to 20 cents of every dollar should be net profit.
Okay. 15 to 20 cents.
I prefer it to be around 18 to 20. I think it can be done. And again, if you just divide it by revenue per head and you start chipping away at it, you can easily get from 14 to 20%. Right? So that's a 6% gain, correct?
Yep.
Imagine this, just by looking at revenue per head and increasing your margins, cutting costs, making sure that everybody in is got a meaningful job description, increasing their revenue per head. If you've increased your margins by 5% over a 2-year period, it's as good as you increasing your sales by 30%.
Right. And which is easier? That's the
Which is
question.
easier.
Which is
Yeah.
easier?
Yeah. So
Which
most
one?
people in
Which
our
one
industry are
carries
always
less
thinking about, I
liability?
want to increase revenue. I want to increase revenue. I want to increase revenue.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take really dig into this, right? Because it's not only about what's easier, but which one of those two, if you have to jump in a car, which one of these two vehicles is going to decrease liability? Because if you're scaling, there's always a liability. Every time that you hire someone, every time that you put an extra truck on the road, that's additional liability. There's no way around that, right?
No.
Sure, we have insurance, we have this, we have that, granted, but it's a lot easier, right, to say, okay, let's find the inefficiencies, let's scale back and increase profitability that way than it is to get an additional 5, 10, 18 players, get, additional routes, get additional clients, all of these other things that go along with that, right?
It's all the churn, man. It's all the churn that goes into making $1 of profit. Right. And so when you concentrate on my metric of, revenue per employee, you're going to run with the most efficient, and moreover, you're going to get balance between your business life and in your other life, right? Because we all have other obligations. This is when you get efficiency, and this is when you really grow. So if you look at the bigger companies, like I said, you should get somewhere around 15 to 18, 20%. Now, companies that are 5 million and under in revenue, you should be around 18 to 22%. And yep, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you can't do that. I get it. I can see the reaction already. But I'm telling you, I have seen it over and over and over again in my office at our firm. We've seen people run companies between 18 to 22% all the time.
Right.
Those are my benchmarks. 18 to 22 cents of every dollar should go in your pocket.
Right. Yeah. And this is like net. And we're talking net. We are
when
talking
all said and done,
overhead, taxes, everything.
It goes in your pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are important numbers, right? Because, and one of the things that I love about every time that I have a conversation with you is it's like, you could make this very heady. You could make this very esoteric. You could make it out there, but then you also have this gift, which I believe is just like, let's break it down in its simplest terms. Because when you're speaking to an entrepreneur, when you're speaking to a business owner, like, we don't want to go through like this whole like mechanical theory on how, finance work. It's like, hey, give me a number. What do I got to do? Okay, now I have this aim. I understand what I need to go for. It's so much easier to make moves based on that without having to, go out and become a CPA, for crying out loud. You know what I mean?
Listen, man, I'm a finance guy and I can geek out on numbers all day long, but I'm not smart enough to make things sound really complicated. I like simple.
Right.
Okay. I like things at a 5th grade level personally.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the landscape. Let's talk about the landscape of the business right now, just so we can kind of start wrapping this up a little bit. So now, at this point, anybody who's stuck around and listened to this, they should have a pretty damn good, solid idea of some important metrics that they could start looking at into their business today and start making those a little bit better, right? We've identified the importance of having clarity in your business. We've identified the importance of having clarity in your own job description. We've identified having clarity as far as what your exit number should be, as well as overall what you're going to do in the life after a restoration business owner. So we've identified all of these things. We've identified some amazing metrics for us to do. Now let's talk about the landscape that you see as far as the opportunity for entrepreneurs to either sell today or to build this perfect business, wrap it up in a bow, and make it marketable and make it sellable and make it attractive. How is the landscape today?
Listen, man, I've been doing this a long time. Okay. And I can tell you that we all in restoration, especially, we have an unbelievable opportunity at the moment, right? As an industry, to really build a business and cash out. I mean, the opportunities are hundreds and hundreds of millions and millions of dollars out there coming into restoration. The amount of private equity calls that I get on a monthly basis is unprecedented. Like, people want to buy restoration companies. Right. The demand is like here, but the number of great companies that people want to buy are here.
Right.
right? So there's the opportunity, right? We have an unprecedented opportunity over the next 5 years, I think, at least for the next 5 years, is to be really build a company smart, build it intentionally, build it efficiently, keeping all these KPIs in mind, and really cash out on all that hard work. I think it's an unbelievable opportunity. At some point, our industry will get consolidated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is kind of how it works.
Right.
Our industry also goes through fragmented, and then it grows, and then it gets consolidated, and then it'll grow again.
Right.
So we are in a phase now where there's consolidation happening, and that phase of an industry, is a great time for entrepreneurs, and a huge opportunity that we can take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
It's unprecedented.
That's awesome. So, in for the sake of clarity, right? Because so you're saying we basically have probably, and again, this isn't an exact science, right? But for the next 5 years, you see great opportunity. Is that enough time for, let's say that someone who's watching and listening to this, is that enough time if they've already been in business for years, they have good revenue, is that enough time for them to say, okay, my focus from here on out as an entrepreneur is to make this squeaky clean and to clean up their books, clean up their operations, clean up their personnel? And also, does this still have an opportunity for the person who literally just started their company like last week? Right now, is that enough runway for them to increase their revenue, start building it properly, and still have a winning shot of a good exit?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, listen, the average entrepreneur in restoration owns their business and operates their business about 8 years. That's it.
What a great
I don't
metric.
know if you knew that or not. Yeah.
Actually, let's stop that right there. Let's stop right there. So here's why I want to talk. Look, man, I remember when I first got into the business, you don't know where the light at the end of the tunnel is, right? So for me, when I hear stuff like this, to me, I remember, and I always go back to the first couple of days in the truck. If you're 4 years in the business, I want you to think about this, right? As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, if I would have heard this in the beginning, it was like 8 years. Okay, cool. I'm like halfway there. We could either make it or break it at this point. Right? Now it's a grind time. And for a guy with ADHD like me, that's like a great motivator, right? But that's an amazing number to focus on, because now you kind of have something to shoot for. You know what's happening in the industry around you as an average. What a great number to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, you better believe it. 8 years is a great time. Okay. I have another saying that I say, run here around the firm is, businesses fail every 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You heard that saying before, right?
Oh, yeah.
So every 10 years, the whole landscape is changing all the time, right? So the really smart entrepreneurs, and this statistic has been good for years, they kind of exit the business every 8 years, give or take, right? A couple of years this way or that way. They're like, hey, I'm good. I'm going to go cash out on all the equity, and I'm going to go do the second thing or the third thing that I want to do. Right. So that's what happens. But I think, coming back to your question, is it enough runway? Yeah, there's enough runway. I mean, we tell our clients all the time, hey, it takes about 3 years to get a business tightened up, not more than that.
Right.
5, 6, 7 years, that's okay. Right. Now, let's say you're 10 years out from selling. But if you build a business along the fundamentals and revenue per employee and efficient and keeping the margins, you could have the worst recession on the planet and somebody will buy your business. So there's always a buyer for a very healthy business.
I love
always a buyer for a healthy business.
I love it.
But here's a secret to it.
Let's go.
One of the mistakes I see entrepreneurs make is they feel like they run their business forever. And I think that's a big mistake. I think you got to put a timeline on it. Okay, I'm going to sell in 5 years. I'm going to sell in 7. I'm going to sell in 10 or 15. Whatever that looks like. Because you know why? Once you put a timeline on it, it creates all the fluff and it creates clarity in what you want to do.
Even if in the owner's mind, and again, we've spoken about this even on our first podcast together, right? Just because you're building for an exit doesn't necessarily mean you need to exit.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
But does that same rule apply? Let's say for the person who's looking to build a legacy, right? And they want to just have this business that they're going to hand down to their family 2-3 generations. Is this still a good practice mentally to be like, hey, I want this business. I want to be out of the business within 10 years or whatever that number is for them. Should that still be a metric that they kind of insert into their thinking?
So do you know one of the greatest growth in companies we see at our firm?
What's that?
This is the scenario. It happens all the time. Hey, Gokul or RBA, we want to sell our company. and we'll do an analysis where it's worth this, you may want to wait 12 months or 15 months before you want to sell.
Mhm.
Do you know that 15 months time that we give them and we work with them, they have more often than not the highest rate of growth in their industry or in their
Right.
company,
Right.
because I put a timeline on there. I mean, listen, last week I talked to a guy last Friday. Gokul, company's going great. I mean, we tipped, we went to the other side. We're profitable.
Right.
It happens over and over and over and over again.
Mm.
We'll do an analysis, and then 2 years later, we'll do an analysis, and that growth between point A and point B is astronomical. We see it happen all the time. You know why? Because there's a timeline.
Right.
And it comes back to clarity. Now you're doing what's most important for you to grow your business.
I love
That's
it.
important. Something about human psychology. When you're like, man, I'm going to run this thing forever. There's something about it. It doesn't give us clarity on how to build a business.
Right. Yeah. Or to do anything for that matter. Right.
Right.
Like even simple tasks. If you don't give yourself a timeline, you'll just wait to the bitter end to complete a task. Right. Yeah. It's like, the task fills the time, that type of thinking, right?
Correct.
Like however much time you allot to it, like it'll take you that long to get it done. So man, Gokul, appreciate you so much jumping onto the show and giving us so much clarity. Again, I love the simplicity that you bring to the table. I think that there's so many nuggets of gold for the entrepreneur who's looking to build their business, scale their business, and then also potentially look for an exit later on down the road. But again, even if they're not looking for that exit, the kind of beautiful business that you will gift yourself,
yes,
by pretending to exit, right? Preparing to exit is such an amazing thing, right? Like being an entrepreneur is stressful enough.
Yep.
If you can go ahead and I don't think it's ever going to be easy, right? Like being in business is never easy. I think you have to choose your hard, right? Doing the kind of waking up aimlessly every day, that becomes hard because you're always reactive. Correct. Being proactive is also hard. The only difference is what the end result is going to be. And I think that these metrics and these numbers and just perspective on that you've provided, it just really kind of sets the sail so that an entrepreneur can get to their end destination. For those that may be listening to this and they're interested, they're like, hey man, I wonder if my business is there. I wonder if it's attractive. I wonder if, we can go ahead and sell. How would they, go about getting in contact with you, learning more about you, or getting some information on, kind of assessing their business?
Yeah, man, listen, entrepreneurship is really difficult, and doing the right actions will create immense wealth for you and your family. And that's really what gets me pumped up when I talk about this stuff, right? So congrats on your show. And yeah, if anyone wants to get a hold of us, it's real simple. Just go to my website. It's www.rbacells.com. We've got tons of resources, tons of books, diagnostic tools, just to help you get going, and happy to answer any of your questions.
Awesome. And Gokul, thank you again for jumping on to the show. Dominators, make sure that you check out the video description below as well as the show notes. I will have links included throughout both areas where you can go ahead and learn more about Gokul. We can go ahead and, definitely dive in. This is the time to do it. The landscape, as Gokul explained, is prime for good businesses that have the potential to be sold. And this is the time to go ahead and take advantage of it. If you haven't quite gotten there yet, there is no better time to start than now. And as per usual, I will see you guys on the next one. Meanwhile, hustle, hack, dominate. Catch you soon.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your #1 resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.